We're at the Remy Modern Gallery looking at the exhibition Warp and Weft, a retrospective of Kaija Sanelma Harris's work. This project originated almost a decade ago. At the time, the Saskatchewan Craft Council Gallery did not have the resources or the space to mount a full retrospective, and so we spent some years trying to find a partner. And we were very lucky to connect with Michelle Jakes of the Remy Modern. And so the project itself is a collaborative exhibition that takes place between Remy Modern and the Saskatchewan Craft Council Gallery. So there are two concurrent exhibitions with different curatorial voices, but it is all Kaija Harris's work. Kaija Sanelma Harris lived in Saskatchewan for many decades, originally coming here through the United States from Finland. The curators for this exhibition, myself, Stephanie Canning from the Saskatchewan Craft Council, and Michelle Jakes from the Remy Modern, came together to discuss this project extensively. We decided to adopt a different curatorial voice for each location. Here at the Remy Modern, Michelle really wanted to situate Kaija in the art history of Saskatchewan. So this is a very Saskatchewan-focused look at who was influencing Kaija at the time and who did she in turn influence. So we not only have pieces by Kaija here, amazing pieces, including ones that we could never mount at the other location, such as Sun Ascending, which you can only see half behind me. It's a huge piece, but Michelle has also curated into the exhibition local artists like Gail Haig-Bloom, Kai Chan, and many others. At the Saskatchewan Craft Council Gallery, Stephanie Canning and myself wanted to focus on the way that Kaija's work adapted and responded to her experimentations over the years. So we have works that are representative of different series and techniques she adopted from the late 1960s to 2008. One of the series that Kaija worked on in, I believe it's the mid-80s, are the Metamorphosis series. She had painted and cut photogel and inserted it into the weaving. And it's just sort of full of light because the weaving itself is open thread with all these pockets that she's put these gels into that she's painted on. So light shines through the back and it just sort of comes through like a stained glass window. So that's an example of how Kaija was changing how she was working in order to play with different materials. One of the amazing things about fiber work is that you have it in your day-to-day. It's your scarves and mittens and toques, it's your bedspread, it's the rug braided out of t-shirts in your living room floor. So when you see textile work in the gallery, it gives you that comforting feeling of warmth and home. I think it's really accessible in that way. Another thing about weaving that we hope people take away from the exhibition is the technical skill and mastery of weaving that Kaija had. While she certainly did create many, many blankets and throws and shawls, that was her livelihood for much of the 70s through the 2000s. She always pushed the technical side of her weaving. Kaija was born in Finland, and her mother was a local seamstress who worked out of the house, so she had a very early introduction to working with textiles and fibers. However, she, along with many other Finnish children, were moved to Sweden to escape the threat of Soviet occupation, to get away from war, and she spent a couple years in Sweden separated from her parents. So she lived with foster parents, who also, her foster mother, who was an amazing weaver and textile worker. So Kaija, despite traveling across countries and being part of different families, had a very strong appreciation for textiles and fibers. In her writing, she talks about wanting to be an architect, but the school was too expensive. So she worked at a bank for quite a while and then decided that she wanted to teach weaving, and she went to a textile institute in Finland. Everything that Kaija could learn about weaving, about material, process, everything she could have learned, she learned there. And so when she came to North America and started to see contemporary weaving, she was a bit appalled, I think. You can tell from her writing. She was a bit appalled seeing people do things so wrong, but be so creative. So she started with a very, very technical upbringing in weaving that was very structured and strict, and this is how you do it. And then she was inspired later, seeing all this contemporary weaving start to make its way into the art galleries. And that is when she started to bring her own voice into these works. One series that I think is very interesting is the excavations series. I spent a lot of time looking at it, trying to figure out how did she do that? It's this weaving that has these little square pockets, and she somehow went in there, took the pockets apart, and then sort of refilled them with material so that she has sort of excavated the weaving itself. At the Saskatchewan Craft Council Gallery, there is a picture of her working on one of those pieces, and you can see a bit of an example of how she worked that process. And it's wonderful to see the piece and also the piece in process. My favorite piece in the entire project is bringing in the New World Order. She created it during the Gulf War, and it was a response to the collateral damage and violence that was happening to the people on the ground. There is an extra layer of interest and mystery in that she designed her own sort of code, a cryptic alphabet that then she wove into the piece, and it says, "I, Kaija Sanelma Harris, wove this piece in the year of the Gulf War." And while that isn't very obvious when you first look at it, the code is sort of for her, I think in that way it made it very personal, and it's very, very beautiful. To learn more about the Warp and Weft project, you can go to remymodern.org or saskcraftcouncil.org and see pages about both exhibitions.
Are you an artist who's interested in appearing on maxTV Local? Let us know at sasktel.com/local.